Good evening, everyone out there with the American Artist Professional League, coming to you live from sunny southern coastal Delaware. Once again, I am Jon Bandish, and I'm here doing social media with the American Artist Professional League. And again, every single week, we're going to come to you, our members, to do an interview with all of you, so we can get to know one another. It's been a lot of fun so far. This week we're just trying to get signed on here. It's a little technical difficulties as always. I'm trying to accept look at that. It only took 2 times for me to click the button, and here we are saying hi. Okay, welcome to Instagram Live.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's good to meet you.
It's my pleasure to meet you as well here. So I apologize for not sending out questions and things. Last week I was in the hospital for a number of days. And again, my voice is a little bit kind of shot. So hopefully I'm projecting loud enough that you can hear me, and everybody out there, you all can hear me as well. So I apologize for not sending the questions. I was just way under the weather. But this was really just informal and fun. You've watched some of the other interviews, so I guess first and foremost, we'll give you the opportunity to sort of introduce yourself to everybody out there listening right now. Go ahead and say who you are, how you came to be a part of the American Artist Professional League.
All right, thank you very much for the opportunity. So my name is Sujit Sudhi. I'm talking to you from a small town called Kenosha in Wisconsin, where it is pretty cold for this time of the year. I grew up in the southern part of India, and then I moved to the United States on account of my job years ago. And I primarily paint landscapes in watercolor, and I've been doing that for a few years now. And as part of my attempt to get to know the other artists from the country, I stumbled upon this website for the American Artists Professional League a few years ago, and then I did put in an application to have myself selected as an election member, and which fortunately happened. And so here I am talking to you.
Pardon me again. I'm still kind of sick under the weather here, so bear with me, folks. Everybody, I apologize. So, well, first off, what an amazing story. First off, to come to the United States, you're coming here. You have the creativity with you as well. Here you are drawing and painting, as you said, mostly landscapes. Talk a little bit about why landscapes, because there's a whole plethora of different subject matter that you could go with. Is there something about the landscape genre that has called to you, maybe per se, any kind of example or an artist or a movement?
Actually, it's a funny story. So, as a kid, I would draw as much and as good as any other kid would, and I was not into painting or anything while I was at school and such. It's after I grew up that I actually decided to pursue art seriously, like I do now. So it all started with me walking into a bookstore because I had time to kill, and accidentally found myself in the aisle where they had books on art. So I happened to find a book which said landscapes, how to paint landscapes in watercolor. So by a British artist by the name William Newton, who's an amazing artist, of course, and he's authored several books. So you know how these books are, they have this way of making you believe that you follow the steps and then it just works, right? So mix a puddle of ultramarine blue, dip your number 2 brush in the puddle, and lay a wash on the paper and wait for it to dry, stuff like so. It looked like it was a bunch of steps, and then you just follow it, right? So I said, okay, this is something I could do. And so I happened to buy the book, and then I tried to uh, copy the steps, and as you can imagine, it was an absolute disaster. So, and that went on for a few years. But because the book I first purchased was a book on landscapes, and uh, I, and since I did not have enough any success for a really long time, I sort of kept at it, and then somehow said, "Oh, I have to somehow figure out how this is done." And then, so I just ended up painting more and more landscapes, and eventually that became my genre of sorts. Yeah.
No, it's really wonderful to hear because it's a genre of painting, especially within realism and representational work that um, I would argue is popular today. I'm not going to say that I don't think it has a popularity to it, but I've been seeing more scenes that incorporate water rather than like a straight landscape. And I've talked with some people who would classify themselves as less of a landscape painter and perhaps more of like a waterscape or even a seascape. I mean, I'm an ocean painter, as if you can't tell by the
Mhm.
background. I'm a little kind of by that, but it's really neat to see that because there's a whole wealth of art history behind that from a European and an American perspective, but then also from other cultures, other Eastern art practices. Is there any particular type of landscape work that you have found that really resonates with you? Is there a landscape painter or like a movement within art history, whether it be a European American art history or whether it be something as far as like you're from India? Is there any kind a person or a group of people from antiquity that you could point towards that has really resonated with you?
Well, yes. I believe not all, but most of what I paint goes back to my upbringing and my childhood. So although I do not live there anymore, I end up painting uh, a lot of scenes from the area where I grew up. So, so, it's a little different from this part of the world because the weather is tropical. So, although there are four seasons, they all feel the same. And then the and because of the tropical nature of the weather, the grass is lush green, the sky is deep blue, and in general, culturally, India has a lot of color attached to the culture. It just the clothing is far more colorful, and just festivals are colorful. It's just a lot of color. I so most of what I paint uh, is is from that part of the world. I still, although I live here, I still paint scenes from that part of the world. And whenever I make trips, I take pictures. I bring back sketches and everything. Plus, I also tend to push, even when I'm painting scenes from North America or other parts of the world, I tend to push color a bit because I'm so used to looking at things in a very colorful manner, if you know what I mean. So yeah, so that's a kind of it's not a movement or anything. It's just something that is embedded within me because of the way I was bred back when I was in India. But um, also as part of since I'm self-taught, never went to art school. Um, I was trained to be a computer programmer. So yeah, so computer science is what I learned. So my degree and everything is in that area. So because I'm self-taught, I had to rely a lot on books and such, uh, not so much on YouTube because when I started, the internet was not so accessible, and YouTube was I don't think there was YouTube. Okay, so I used to rely on a bunch of books, and some of the books from this part of the world have had a huge influence on me. So I do not know if you're familiar with a book titled "Watercolor You Can Do It," and it's authored by yeah authored by an amazingly skilled artist named Tony Couch, which I believe is also used as a textbook in several art schools across the country, and maybe several parts of the world. So his work has been a huge influence. And I think when I started to see his work is when I realized that what's important is to keep it simple, and what's important is to convey what you're trying to say with as few brushstrokes as possible. And that, because I used to live on the impression that the success of a painting lies in the amount of detail you put in, and then Tony Cott is one who opened doors to a whole different world for me. So yeah, so although I've met him, so I've tried, but I've never been able to take a workshop of his. But I think a lot of what I paint has to do with how I got myself mentored by him, by following his book and his work. Yeah.
That's fantastic. If you don't mind talking just a little bit about why you went from computer programming and decided to follow that inner passion of drawing and painting. It sounds like, like so many other people, you have this sort of something that's deep down inside your soul that is creative, and you want to be creative, and then you go to school for anything else. In your case, it was computer programming. Was there something that was a catalyst in your life that decided, I'm not doing that anymore, I'm just going to draw and paint? I know you talked about coming across that how to paint landscape book that was anything but easy to use. But was there any other kind of event or anything that this for you was this catalyst?
Well, as a kid, I would draw a bit, but like I said, as much as kids draw, nothing. I was not a prodigy of any sort. I was just, drawing, as like any other kid would do. But I did receive a lot of encouragement from my parents and my family. But I did win a few prizes. But looking back, those paintings were not just bad, but hopelessly horrible. But I have no idea why they picked those, why I won prizes back then. But anyway, but I had a thing for drawing cartoons because I found that that was an easy way to put a smile on the faces of people. So as a kid, I did actually sort of train myself to draw cartoons. We basically would copy, pictures, cartoons of or caricatures of public figures from newspapers and periodicals and such. So throughout my childhood, I was unaware that I was doing it, but I was actually did train myself to draw a bit. So somehow it was a dormant, skill that was lying inside me. And then, but eventually, like I said, I picked up computer science. I decided to pursue a master's degree and everything. So I had to say goodbye to drawing and painting. So I was not doing anything of that sort anymore. And several years later, when I, like I said, stumbled upon the book, that sort of rekindled the, fire in me. And so I started to try and, get used to the medium called watercolor. And to be honest with you, when I went to the bookstore and I picked the book, there were actually several books. There were books on oil painting, there were books on other media. But in my mind, I'm thinking, it looks like oil painting is what grown-ups do, and watercolor is what I did in school. So maybe it's easier. And that's how I picked up watercolor. And much to my, it goes, right? It's apparently the toughest of mediums. And so then the fact that I had decided to try it and it was not working for me sort of pushed me to try harder and harder. That sort of gave me a lot of practice, and I think I could hold my skill that way. And that's how I got here. So it was basically total accident, no accident, nothing. It's just by total accident. I picked up watercolor and started to work on it. And just because that the major reason why I pursued it relentlessly for a long time was because I was failing at it, and I was not happy with that. I was trying to tell myself that this is something that other people can do, and so you can also do it. So I just kept practicing, and that is how I got where I am. So still practicing. You know,
Well,
you know,
that's fantastic advice for somebody else who's perhaps younger, or even if they're older, who are out there and they are just getting started on their artistic journey. They're going to hear that word practice. I'm from Philly, so we hear the word practice, we automatically laugh and go back to Allen Iverson and that very famous sports interview. And he was like, "Are we talking about practice?" Yeah, practice makes perfect. Just because you try your hand at something, right, and it doesn't work, doesn't mean that you can't learn from that. And even if the painting is unsuccessful overall, if you learn something from it, you're taking that learning with you to the next, right? So there's a whole wealth behind that. Thank you very much for sharing that, because I'm sure there's there's going to be somebody that comes across this that's going to hear that and it's going to click for them, and that's just always a great thing, right?
yeah,
So
I think so. And to be honest with you, the opening line of Tony Couch's book did help because it reads, "This book is dedicated to anybody who is willing to practice and willing to be patient enough to wait long enough to wait so that the skill can be mastered." So, so then that told me that it's not gonna be easy and it's gonna take time. I just decided to give it a shot for as long as it was going to take.
well, and especially being self-taught, I mean, my hat is off to you. It's hard enough to learn to do something in a professional sense when you have instructors and people that know what they're doing, to then take the time to do the learning on your own. You may, like you said, have resources, books, YouTube videos, whatever the case may be. It is still very difficult to sit there and figure something out, especially if you're come across a roadblock, if you will, and you don't know how to get past that. Sometimes having somebody there to sort of guide you as a helping hand is nice. So I will say that my hat is off to you for doing it, on your own. It's quite an accomplishment, to say the least.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, yeah, you're right, because one of the problems with teaching yourself is that when you get started, you do not realize that there's several approaches to art. There's just different paths you could take to get where you want to go, and then so you start following a certain artist who has a certain approach which you're not aware of, and then you switch to a different person, and that person has a different approach, and then now you're just going back and forth between styles and approaches and and techniques and everything. So it's very easy to get lost, and which I I I have experienced a lot, because you just get lost within the uh, how do you say that, within the vast amount of knowledge that's out there, which is supposed to be helping you in some way or other. But sometimes if you don't you make the right choices, there's a very good chance that you will not make any progress at all, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think that points towards sometimes you have to just make a decision and then go with that decision, right? There's that old phrase, paralysis by analysis. You can think through and think about and think about and think about something all day long, and all of a sudden you realize you've not done anything. You've just thought about it all day long. And sometimes that's okay. There's something to be said about looking at something and really taking it in and saying, does this work? Does this not work? What are my intentions? But after a while, you do have to put the brush to the canvas, so to speak, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And plus, you have to make it look like you did it, and not make it look like you are making a copy of what somebody else did.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
yeah, because it's great to sit there and make copies and learn. Like, I think anybody that went to an art school, in a European or an American art school, either learned about and or had to do as an assignment a painting with the Zorn palette, right? Anders Zorn was a Swedish painter. His palette's sort of famous for being a very minimal palette with just a few colors. But what he was able to accomplish mixing those colors. So, there's one thing to be said about that, but who wants to be known as somebody that was a master at somebody else's color palette or at somebody else's style, right? Just because, say like John Singer Sargent's a great figure painter, but there's a whole other, possibilities that are out there of what you could do as a figure painter, right? Or in this case, you're talking about landscape work. So it's great to learn, but then you've got to figure out, what does it mean for you, right? That's the hard part. That sounds like what you've been succeeding at.
Well, yeah, I'm trying. I'm trying. It's all I can say. I still have a lot of failures, but I'm still trying. And while we're on this topic, the other thing that caused a lot of frustration was that you're looking at a scene or a reference image, and then you have to, let's say, have to plan in your mind or see in your mind what it's going to look like when it's finished as a painting. And that is a very important skill, which I learned the hard way. And that is very difficult to achieve when you are sometimes when you're teaching yourself, because you always tend to uh, use the you tend to borrow the interpretation of the other artist whom you're following, right? So John Singer Sargent would look at this guy and paint it this way. So okay, let's do the same. Is what he would do. So eventually you end up you do not you end up painting maybe paintings that look good, but uh, those don't reflect your personality, or they do not have any creative element that is your contribution to the piece of work, you know. So that's something that was also pretty tough. But yeah, but I'm glad I survived and I'm able to pursue it. So yeah.
Well, we're glad as well for you as well. So kind of moving along here, some of the other questions that I would ask you, and this is, I'm not trying to stump you or anything. These are just sort of fun questions. You know, we talked about some of your influences as far as childhood and India being as colorful and as vibrant as it is, right? And then you moved to a part of the U.S. that for what, 4 to 5 months out of the year is nothing but cold, gray, and snowy, and anything but colorful, right? Um, is there any type of piece of any particular artwork, whether it's a painting, a sculpture, anything, that is something that stands out in your mind the most, is something that you would possibly like to own? In a perfect world, you know, boom, you had tons and tons of, you had Elon Musk kind of money. You could, you know, you could buy whatever you want. If there's something out there that is just like, you know what, I want to own that. I want to see that every day.
Yeah. Yes. Um, um, Remember I talked about the first ever book I bought, and it was authored by a British artist named William Newton. He's from the north of England. So if I had money, I would go to his studio and purchase a piece of his, because in a strange, weird way, one of the primary reasons why I'm painting landscapes in watercolor is him. I mean, he doesn't know it, but I mean, I mean, he's the one who sort of, how do I say that? He's the one who sort of uh, encouraged me to take those baby steps through his book. And if I had not bought that book, I probably would never have been painting or would have been talking to you this way. So if I could, I would purchase a piece of his as a keepsake and as a reminder of how it all started.
That's fantastic. Wow. Um, it's interesting because I asked that question to everybody, just about every one of these interviews, and I get something different every time. And it's just so cool to listen to what, and then the kind of the why. Really, the why is really just that's if you're out there listening, Mr. Newton, you know, here we go. Here is a pupil of yours that is grateful for all the learning that he has been able to undertake from you. That's fantastic. Now, kind of along those lines, kind of not, within the art world itself, right now, you live in a part of the country that is definitely landlocked. And I don't know if you're necessarily near any major cities, or if you're in one of the major cities in Wisconsin. Which, by the way, I'm a big Green Bay Packers fan, so I got a little bit of Wisconsin with me over here, right? But with that regards of how you've been showing your art, and all the different avenues that exist in the world today, whether, you know, social media, everything on computers, the internet, galleries all around the world. Is there anything about the art world right now that you wish you could change? Is there something that that you've encountered that perhaps you would say, boy, I wish I could change that. This was not good.
Yeah, well, before I get there, Wisconsin is landlocked a bit, but if I drive 10 miles west, I would be at the shores of Lake Michigan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's that close. It's close there. It's close enough for me to feel the chilly wind from the lake. So it's really close. So what could I change? I think, excuse me. I think one of the things that is not just in America but in just the entire world is that it is not. It's very difficult for someone to make a living from art. I mean, you have to. There's a certain threshold that you have to cross into popularity before you can start, making a decent living out of art. Because we're all familiar with the expression starving artist, and which is unfortunately true to a great extent. Because I know there are. Take for instance my case. I'm able to talk to you. I'm able to be interviewed by the American Artists Professional League and such. But I'm sure there are a bunch of other people. There are maybe millions of artists who are like 10, 100 times more skilled than me who never get noticed, right? So unfortunately in the art world, for you to make a living, you got to cross a certain level of popularity, and that's when people suddenly realize that, oh, this artist's work is really good. But I think if I could change something, I could change the way patrons or art lovers perceive art and do not link the value of art to the popularity of the artist. I do not know if I made sense, but I think if someone's skilled, they deserve to be appreciated, and they deserve to make a good living from what they're doing.
I could not disagree with you even a little bit. I myself have been somebody that has thought about, is there some kind of possibility for artists to sort of form their own, dare I say, union? Maybe not like a union per se in this traditional sense, but just something where, you have certain types of creative people that have unions. You think of in the U.S. That's been pretty famous that the writers in Hollywood were on a strike.
Mm-hmm.
So, like that group of creative people, were able to get together and unionize, and then, then you have the Screen Actors Guild, which is, I mean, they're basically a union for all intent purposes. You have to pay a due to to get your card and to be able to have that card to act in movies. So whether it's what you would call it in a traditional quote unquote union, I've often thought, like, what if visual artists got together and somehow we're able to do that? So you're talking about being appreciated at a fair wage, right? And having that, I dare I say, I think it all stems from the education. I would argue, as far as changing the art world, it starts with education. I want the arts to be taught and appreciated more. I am still waiting, and I'll probably die waiting, for somebody to stand running for president of the United States saying, I want to promote the arts. I'll probably die waiting for a president to platform that in their presidential speeches, but boy, that would be something else to hear. So.
Absolutely, but I suspect that that's going to happen during our lifetime.
Well, we can hope and dream, right? That's all
exactly.
you can say.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Now, one question that I like to ask people, and this is just a lot of fun. You talked about if you had any kind of money, if you could buy something. But from art history, is there anybody out there, if you forget language barriers, forget all of that kind of stuff, right? Sort of just in a hypothetical sense, right? This is a perfect scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anybody anybody from art history that if you could have dinner or drinks or coffee or or anything, pardon me, if you could have anything like that and sit down and have a conversation with anybody from art history, who would it be and why?
Winslow Homer,
Oh,
if you've seen his.
oh okay. That was very quick. Go ahead and talk a little bit about that.
Well, if anybody who's seen the work of Winslow Homer would have the answer to the question why. It's it's such an amazing. Well, he revolutionized watercolor in a way that it became much more popular among artists as it is as now. And he was sort of the start point to it, and the way he kept it all simple and the way he, you know, made it look like you could paint something and connect with the audiences directly without them having to make guesses about what's being painted and stuff like that. It was just a straight talker in terms of his art, right? I mean, speaking as if he was like a speaker who would speak just plain sentences without using any bombastic words and stuff like that. So it was just basically that kind of an artist. And then and the greatness of his work lies in its simplicity. So I would be really interested in talking to him to find out what he went through, his life experiences. I'm sure that is what led to him making those choices. And I'm really interested in what led to what he was doing, the way he was doing. Right?
I believe he was, because I did see a bunch of his work at a retrospective in Philly some years ago. I believe he actually was a correspondent for a newspaper during the American Civil War, where he was sketching battles and scenes of the battles. So I would wonder if that, and I'm familiar with his work as in I've seen it, and he's an amazing painter. But as far as his life story, I'm not terribly familiar with. But I wonder if something like that had any kind of effect on him. That's an interesting. Boy, see, this is why I love having these interviews. This is so much fun. I've gotten so many different people. It's just really wonderful to sit there and hear how a different artist has influenced somebody today. It's just a fantastic thing. I think it's amazing.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think so too. And Winslow Homer was self-taught too, so that sort of inspires several. That inspired me, and I'm sure it does inspire a lot of other artists who went to school to learn something else and then eventually decided to pursue art. So, yeah.
Wow, fantastic. All right, so I try to keep these to about a half an hour or so, and we're kind of right around that time frame. So we'll end here with you. Just give you a little bit of the floor here, if you will, at the end, just to say where people can see more of your work. If you're showing in any galleries, if you're a part of any shows right now, go ahead and just let everybody out there that's watching this live here and or watching this on a replay where they can see more of your work at.
All right. So I'm pretty active on social media, on Facebook and on Instagram, and then my Instagram handle and my Facebook page are both my first name, last name. So Sujit Sudhi, spelled Sujit Sudhi. So if you search for my name on Facebook or Instagram, you'll be able to find my work. I post regularly, sometimes almost on a daily basis, because I try to find time to paint every day. So plus I have some. So like I said, I live in Kenosha, which is a little north of Chicago, and 50 miles north of Chicago, about 40 miles south of Milwaukee. I have my work displayed at galleries around here. One of them is called Lemon Street Gallery, which is right by the Lake Michigan. So if you are ever in Kenosha, that's the place where you could go to view my work. Apart from that, I do submit my work to several national and international juried shows, and sometimes, well, my work sometimes gets selected, sometimes a lot of times get rejected, of course. So yeah, so this year has been good. I I had my Peace of Mind juried into the national show of the Canadian Society for Painters and Watercolor. The show was in Toronto. I also got a Peace of Mind selected to be displayed at the Scottish American combined show, which is conducted by the National Watercolor Society. Yes. And I also got a piece juried into the Transparent Watercolor Society's, Society of America's first ever online show. So yeah, so that's where you could see my work online. And then apart from that, if ever a Piece of Mind gets selected into a show, I always post information on Facebook. So if you are in driving distance, you could go take a look. Yeah, so that's about it.
Oh, fantastic. So again, if you're in that Kenosha area, if you're in the Chicago, Milwaukee area, it's not that far to get down to see some amazing work. And again, thank you very much for coming on here this afternoon. Well, for you, it's probably more afternoon. For me, it's evening, right? Because they're about an hour behind
Yeah,
on Central Standard Time. Okay.
exactly. It's 4:30 for me. So yeah.
Well, fantastic. Thank you again for taking the time out to come on and talk with us today. I'm personally very appreciative. We're having a lot of fun doing this interview series. I think it's great because people get together and talk, especially when you see somebody at a show. It's now it's like, oh, hey, I know them. I watched them on an interview. Like, I really like their work. Or hey, like, what a cool life story. This Sujit's, he was self-taught as an artist. I think it's great. When the more that you know about another fellow artist, I think it just helps build community. So thank you very much for taking your time out with us
Well,
today.
thank you for the opportunity. It was great talking to you, and having moved here from a different part of the world, I always feel good when I get an opportunity to connect to fellow artists and stuff like that. So thank you very much.
Pleasure is all mine. I look forward to seeing more of your work as well, more events with the American Artists Professional League. For right now, thank you all very much. We'll see you next week, same time.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.